Hello. The objective for this video lesson is to solve one-step equations, but now using a multiplication and division. We used addition and subtraction in the previous video. So let's take a look. So we are going to solve using multiplication and division. 2x means 2 times x. There's your multiplication. And then to solve it, we are going to divide. There's your multiplication and division. That's what we're going to focus on now. How do we solve using multiplication and division? So in a previous video, we talked about solving means to find a solution. We're going to look at this in terms of a seesaw first. And you saw this in the previous videos. We want to get the box by itself. The box has some guys hidden in there. So we want to get the box by itself. That's called a solution. If you did not see the previous videos, you'll see what I'm talking about here shortly. Well, we have two boxes, but we only want one box by itself. So if we have two boxes or 2 times the number of boxes, we can divide. We can cut it in half. Well, we can also then cut the number of guys in half as well, because to keep the seesaw balanced, you have to do the same thing to both sides. Otherwise, it'll tilt. And so then what you end up with is just one box and 4 guys instead of 8. Well, let's take a look at what this looks like with equations. So when we're dealing with equations, we want to get the x by itself. So here's our equation. Just like we did over here with the seesaw where we cut both sides in half, we are going to divide by 2 on both sides of the equation. That's the same as cutting it in half. Little reminder, we covered this in orders of operations. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 times x is x. So the numbers then disappear. So what do we have left? We have just an x on this side, and then 8 divided by 2 is 4. So x equals 4, which is the same as the box equals 4 guys. And now we have solved the equation using multiplication and division. Let's talk about this a little bit more and try some practice problems. Quick reminder before we start talking more about these equations. Some of these equations are really easy. And so you're like, duh, I don't need to do all those steps. Well, a reminder, the reason we do all those steps is because the problems get a lot more challenging. So it's easier to learn the steps with the easy equations. And then when you get to the harder equations, you've mastered the steps. So that's why we're doing the steps. Okay, let's try some practice problems here. So we have 3x, which means 3 times x, but we're just going to leave it as 3x equals 6. I want the x by itself. I have a 3, it's times, so I'm going to divide. I am going to divide both sides by 3. Do the same thing to both sides of the equation. Keep it balanced. And now 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times x is x. And then 6 divided by 3 is 2. Done. There is my solution. Let's look at another example. And I'm going to hide this other stuff here so we don't get confused. 5 times x is 15. It's times, so we're going to divide. by the number we're trying to get rid of because we want the x by itself. 5 divided by 5 cancels. And then if you divide the other side by 5, you get 3, x equals 3. Let's take a look at the last example. Well, now the x is on the other side. Well, as we saw in the other video, that doesn't matter as long as we do the same thing to both sides. So I'm going to divide both sides by 5 to cancel that 5. And I'm going to divide the other side by 5 because we keep the seesaw balanced. These 5s are gone. You have x equals 15 divided by 5 is 3. There's your solution. Let's look at some division problems. This little fraction bar also means division. So we have x divided by 2. I want the x by itself, so I have to get rid of the 2. It's divide, so I'm going to multiply. I am going to multiply both sides by 2, but I'm going to write it right next to it. For multiplication, that kind of works a little bit easier for us. Now you have here, you have 2, then divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 times x is x. And 5 times 2 is 10. Done. Let's check that. If we write the original equation, but I'm going to change the x to 10 because that's what I figured out the answer to be. Is 10 divided by 2 equal to 5? Check. Let's try a different problem. Oops, that's not going to work. Let's get rid of those. It's divide by 4. So I'm going to multiply by 4, both sides. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 1 times x is x. And then on the other side, 8 times 4 is 32. Now the x is on the other side. It doesn't matter as long as you do the same thing to both sides. There's a 4 next to the x, but it's divide by 4. So I'm going to multiply. 4 divided by 4 cancels. It's 1. 1 times x is x. So I get x equals 4 times 8 is 32. Done. So what we saw is when we're solving and there's multiplication and division, we're still getting the x by itself, but when it's a multiplication problem, we'll divide. If it's a division problem, we'll multiply. Those are inverse operations, multiplication and division. They cancel, give you 1. 1 times x is x. Bada bing, bada boom. There is your answer. Let's see what's coming up next. In the next video, we will cover two-step equations where there are 2 numbers over on the same side as the x. And so then you have to get rid of both numbers. Step 1, step 2. That's what we'll see in the next video. See you then.